So I just want to ask quickly, who here is a first-generation immigrant? So that's the way of me asking, who here wasn't born in Canada? Dang, we have a lot of hands up, all right. So let me ask you another question that's completely unrelated. Have you ever wondered why magazine covers or TV shows or movies or billboard ads don't have anybody that really looks like you? Let me ask you another question, actually. If those magazine covers, TV shows, or billboard ads had a more diverse representation, women, men, race, sexual orientation, how might that influence you from buying those magazines, watching those movies, or TV shows? More recently, I was at my parents' house, and I like to collect magazines from all over the world, so fashion and design magazines. And I realized out of 55 magazines that I've collected over the years, none of them have someone on the cover that's not of a non-white race, so male or female. And more recently, I was actually thinking about this. I am more likely to want to do a business partnership or engage in a social venture with a white male than I am with one of my own race. This may seem shocking to some of you, but it shouldn't be. Because I was originally born in Congo, actually, a country that's been colonized by Belgium, and I immigrated to Canada not too long ago. And both in Congo and in Canada, I've only been taught about characters or political leaders or wealthy businessmen on TV that are white males. Now, I know, this is TEDxSFU. We're an educated crowd who do not have any prejudice or discriminatory views towards others. We know better. Well, last semester in my master's program here at SFU, I'm a proud alumni, my professor asked us in class, do you think that a woman of African descent, who is black, can have the same world impact as Dr. Paul Farmer or Mother Teresa? How would you answer that? Yes. Fair enough. Unanimously, in a class of about 30 graduate students, everyone said no. It's 2016, guys. This is a problem. At the age of 8, I immigrated to Canada in the city of Montreal with my family, and I quickly realized that the way women who look like me are perceived by society is not always positive. Or were there many of us in the media promoted as a success story for me to look up to? In my preteens, I never understood why every magazine cover had the same looking girl on it, usually big perky breasts, which is very hard to find in reality, blue eyes, blonde hair, really skinny, and at that age, I wasn't familiar with Photoshop, so I really thought that for me to think of myself as beautiful or feel beautiful, I had to look like that. During my teens, when I would watch Nickelodeon or white TV on Saturday mornings, I never understood why none of the cartoon characters ever looked like me. From my hair, my body shape, I love my curves, my skin color, none. And all of this I was observing at the age of 8. Now let's fast forward a little bit. At the age of 19, I landed my first internship at the World Health Organization in Kinshasa, where I was originally from. And I was really honored to be part of boardroom meetings with international agency members from all over the world, where one stakeholder told me that as an Afro-Canadian, I get to speak up at these meetings because I'm perceived as a white woman living in a black girl's body. So a very intellectual, powerful person told me that I was an Oreo. Yes. Now, during my master's program, my professors explained to me that the way particular groups are portrayed by society goes back to poorly documented historical facts that continues to be poorly taught in classrooms. Such facts, no Google search will elaborate on. Google's not going to elaborate on how certain groups of people continue to be treated poorly. Google's not going to talk about that because, let's be honest, it's uncomfortable to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's not a sexy topic. It leads to many of us feeling so guilty in the fact that we're unable to tackle the issue. Now, at the age of 16, I had the chance of visiting South Africa for the very first time, where I got to see the prison where Mandela spent his last few years, behind bars. And I'll never forget, until this day, there was a quote beside the jail cell from a book which collected all of Mandela's popular and famous speeches. And until this day, I have this very quote memorized. To be free is to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Our human compassion binds us to one another, not in pity, not patronizingly, but as humans who have learned to turn our common suffering into hope for the future. Now, I really believe that it is possible for our society to change the historical portrayals of particular groups. But in order for that to occur, there's a need for a social change. And for a social change to occur, there's a need for a paradigm shift. First, in order for that to occur, we must recognize our very own innate and inherited biases. Again, we must recognize our innate and internalized biases, which we all have. This includes recognizing that those who you are least exposed to are usually the ones that you have the most prejudice towards. This includes recognizing that the majority of your life has been lived in particular spaces of dominance, where when you were in elementary school, your teacher would unknowingly teach you about particular characters that would uplift particular groups at the expense of others. This includes recognizing your position of power and supremacy, which we all exercise on others without any care, any conscience, or any thoughts. That's why it is so critical to recognize the harsh reality lived by others. And only through exposing yourself to those with lived experiences that are different from your own will you allow yourself to shift these misconceptions that you continue to exercise on others. And it is so critical to always be reflective of our own biases. It's not comfortable, but you have to do it. And only then will you shift the discourse that continues to uphold social inequities. Not inequalities, but social inequities. Secondly, once we recognize these internalized biases, we must address it. And I truly believe that we can address these biases by creating safe spaces. Safe spaces are where we learn to be comfortable with uncomfortable topics. Safe spaces are where we have this way of challenging the elephant in the room. We all either do it or see it, so might as well talk about it. Safe spaces must happen anywhere and everywhere, from coffee shops to restaurants to classrooms to TEDx. Anywhere human dialogue can stimulate these conversations and shift our misconception of others. And that way, we can address these social myths that continue to undermine prejudiced views that we exercise on others. When you hear the story of graduate students here at SFU not agreeing with the idea of a Black Mother Teresa or a Black woman ever having the impact that Mother Teresa had on the world, your heart aches. And I sat there in class, and there was a voice in my head that said, you're never going to be as successful. Or no matter how hard you try, you're never going to get to the top. You know, guys, it's exhausting. I wish I was part of a society where when I walk down the street or when I'm at a bar here in Vancouver, some people don't look at me weird. I wish that someone like Beyonce, yes, the queen bee, I love her, when she released a song like Formation, which she talks about the issues that many blacks or African Americans, I should specify, continue to live, that she didn't get a lot of backlash for it. I wish that when I walk down the street and I see beautiful Muslim women wearing a hijab or a niqab, that people behind them are now whispering things like terrorism, bomb dropper, or Al-Qaeda. I wish that Asian women were not seen as some kind of weird fetish for their subordinate ways. We've all seen Mulan. Asian women are conquerors. I'm just saying. I wish that my friend who just came out to her family about being a lesbian was not disowned by her family, or she didn't fear that when she's at work, she'll be discriminated for her sexual orientation. I wish that I was part of a generation that was more familiar with terms like intersectionality. I wish that more of us, when we take the bus 135 or walk down the east side area in Hastings, we didn't just look at the population that's there from a pitiful eye, but we ask ourselves, why is it that Indigenous Canadians, First Nation, Inuit, and so forth, are disproportionately way more impoverished than any other racial groups? And saying that they choose to be poor, it's garbage. I come from a third world country. Poverty is not a choice, nor is it great. Trust me. I wish that more of us in this generation were familiar with terms like institutionalized racism. Write that down if you don't know what that is. I wish that black men that are perceived on television were more than just violent rappers saying vulgarity, because that's what the industry wants. And I wish that more of us will be more curious to inquire about other people's culture, because after all, the majority of us here are immigrants. I wish that some of you would come up to me and ask me about my culture. I love it. Ask me about black hair. Maybe people find that very interesting. Ask. It's okay to be curious. If anything, it's a good thing. But what's not okay is internalize these biases that we all have and lie to yourself in thinking that you're not acting on those biases. You are, whether you like it or not. That's why I chose to speak here today, because it's crazy to me that in the year 2016, a group of well-educated graduate students from an institution that prides itself in engaging the world is training future leaders who don't believe that a woman like myself could ever have a global impact. Guys, I'll say it again. Recognize those internal biases, which we all have. Address it in an environment that's welcoming, where you create these spaces. You have to create it, where you welcome these conversations, where you're open-minded in being comfortable with what may seem as uncomfortable. That way, we stop putting particular groups of people in a box of limitations. Thank you.